Okay, so the whole Tim Shieff thing, for those who don't know, Tim Shieff is known for Ninja Warrior and also advocating for like flat earth. That's cool. And also veganism. And just recently he decided to eat some eggs and a little bit of fish in an attempt to try and fix some kind of undiagnosed vague health claims. More on that in a minute. The only reason I'm touching on this is because of the reaction from the vegan online like YouTube community. Happy Healthy Vegan made a video about it. They actually know Tim. They've interviewed him before. And I don't know, like when the guy was eating raw vegan, when he was fasting for 35 days, no problem. You don't need to say anything, I guess. But as soon as he eats some eggs, that's when it's time to respond. And it's not like they didn't know about it. They clearly knew about his extended fast.
I became quite concerned for Tim when I saw that earlier this year he went on this extended 35-day water fast.
I don't know. Wouldn't that have been like a good time to make an open letter, an open message to Tim Shieff? Like, hey, maybe don't do this. It's not the safest thing. I get a lot of shit for, making videos, criticizing vegans and the things that some of them are saying and a lot of this pseudoscience and whatever, but, this is ultimately why I'm doing it. Like, I know that a lot of times I'm not going to be able to change, like, the person, especially if they have a large platform and they're making money promoting some certain thing. I'm not naive enough to think that I'm actually going to change their mind, but at the very least, I can maybe influence their audience and get them thinking in a different way and possibly prevent them from doing something stupid like fasting for 35 days. I'm not saying that every single vegan channel should start calling out vegans for saying dumb stuff. I'm not saying that at all. Obviously, if you have a recipe channel and that's what you do, I don't expect you to do that sort of stuff. Absolutely. But if you have a channel like Happy Healthy Vegans where you are constantly going after, so to speak, stupid things that anti-vegans say, it kind of makes you seem a little bit biased when you're not questioning things that vegans say and when you aren't making an attempt to point out when vegans are doing things that are potentially harmful to themselves and to their viewers if their viewers intend on following their advice. So anyway, back to Ryan's video. So he also echoes the call for a blood test. Others are saying get a blood test, and he says the same thing, urging Tim to get a blood test. Blood tests don't answer everything. Vegans have this idea that you just go to the doctor and get a blood test, and it can just answer everything. There are lots of health issues. There are lots of maladies that cannot be diagnosed with a blood test. Vegan Gains also made a video, and to his credit, he did criticize the fasting. He's also a bit better on the criticism of Tim, not seeing a doctor. But in the end, he's still urging Tim to come back to veganism. Why? I just don't understand this. Richard knows that Tim has issues with all things medicine, mainstream science. Does he really think that if Tim won't see a doctor, that somehow staying vegan is going to help him? I think it's much more likely that he's going to keep going down the alternative medicine route. I think it's much more likely that he's going to keep doing these restrictive diets. And it's made even worse by the fact that he is vegan, so now he doesn't have this nutritional failsafe that animal products provide. There are a lot of terrible things about meat, of course, but increasing the risk of malnourishment is not one of them. A properly planned vegan diet is adequate, but it has to be properly planned. If you are not putting in a little bit of effort, a little bit of planning into how you eat a vegan diet, you're probably going to run into deficiencies. And doing that, putting in that effort and putting in that planning requires at least some amount of respect for science and the science of nutrition. And this is clearly a respect and knowledge that Tim does not possess. And how is this good for vegan outreach? I mean, yeah, the Ninja Warrior stuff is really cool, but he's also been on television promoting flat earth stuff. Is that really? I don't know. That's the epitome of a crazy vegan stereotype. There's this twisted idea across seemingly most of vegan YouTube that is, either pretty much explicitly expressed or implicitly expressed, that as long as you're vegan, it doesn't really matter what you do. As long as you're vegan, everything else is okay. And while yes, every single non-vegan is killing a certain number of animals, the number of animals killed or spared by the people that we influence is going to be greater than the animals that we directly affect with our actions. Of course, that doesn't make it okay for like you to personally kill animals as long as your advocacy turns enough people vegan to make up for it. But, you know, maybe not everybody needs to be vegan, particularly those who are just too naive and too gullible to do it properly. It'd be great if Tim could come to terms with a world that isn't magical. But he clearly hasn't yet, and who knows if he ever will. And unless you can talk him out of this conspiracy mindset, I don't see how encouraging him to go vegan is going to be helpful. It just seems like it's only going to hurt him more personally, because again, he's probably not going to do it correctly, and also just create another bad advocate. This is why we need to stop exalting every single person who promotes veganism as an amazing role model for veganism, especially people like Tim who are so in this crazy pseudoscience mindset. It is so likely that they are going to crash and burn, and when they do, they're going to blame it on veganism or associate it with veganism. So beyond all of that, I only have a couple observations that I think most of the other responses to Tim missed.
Took a step in the direction, the very last thing I would ever, something I thought I'd never do. And that's turned towards potentially eating an animal product.
It wasn't the last thing, though, because Tim chose to do that instead of doing the obvious thing, which is to see a doctor. That should have been the first thing. And the fact that Tim is so privileged and lives in a country with one of the best free healthcare systems in the world makes that even worse. There are so many people in this world who legitimately cannot see a doctor. Either they live in a developing country and they don't have access to like modern medicine, or they live in the US and they can't afford going to see their doctor. Anybody of low income and with no health insurance living in the US could find that insurmountable. I'm extremely sympathetic to people who go to alt med as a last result, right? They've gone to their doctor, or maybe, again, they can't afford it or they don't have access to doctors, and so they turn to alt med. I'm sympathetic to that, but my patience has worn so thin for people like Tim who have access to care, have access to great care, and they don't take advantage of it. That is such a slap in the face to the millions of people in this world who would do anything to be able to take themselves, to take their children, to see a doctor, to get proper medical care. As far as Tim's actual symptoms and what they could possibly be, obviously I'm not a doctor. I'm not in any position to diagnose anything. But I mean,
for the last few years now, I've felt really uncomfortable in my body, and just day to day was being really waking up, really stiff body, stiff spine, cracking joints.
How likely is it that any of this has anything to do with diet? Is this person pointed out in the comments, like, doesn't it make more sense that this is probably just due to Tim's lifestyle? If Tim had actually gone to a doctor and told them about what he does and his intensive training, I kind of doubt that they'd be that interested in his diet at that point. Nobody can keep this sort of thing up forever. Like, the body will suffer. You will suffer consequences for this. If you look at most sports, their retirement age is much younger than most other professions, right? There's a reason for that. You suffer injuries and the body just can't take it anymore, and you can't perform as well as you once could. Aging is scary. I hate aging. I hate it. I feel older, now than I did even 5 years ago, and it sucks. And unfortunately, there's no magical cure for it. It's just something that you have to learn to accept, and you have to look for, or you have to create other things in your life that are more meaningful so that you don't feel like, oh, I'm getting older and I'm going to die soon. He has to accept this. I mean, we all have to accept this, and some of us have an easier time of it than others, but to move forward and to get healthy ultimately, he has to accept that he is aging. All of us, even those who are not athletes, are going to feel different when we are 30 versus when we were 20. So anyway, if Tim is not going to change the way that he thinks at just a a core level, I mean, how he views the world, especially when it comes to food and health, I just don't see how he can be vegan healthfully. And I'm not saying that he should go carnivore or anything like that, but I think being vegan is just too much for him. Maybe he could start eating oysters. They're very likely not sentient, and they contain vitamins and minerals like B12 that can be lacking in unbalanced vegan diets. So that's it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Subscribe. That's neat. Support the channel. Patreon.com/unnaturalvegan. And I will have a new video very soon.